Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the top 5 worst fantasy worlds to live in. I'm going to be ranking them on 3 different categories. The first category being would I survive, the second category being fear factor, and the third category being a hostility scale. I'm just going to go ahead and get into the first world that I would not want to live in. Each of these categories I'm going to rank each book out of 10. So a 0 out of 10 being that I would survive means it's highly likely that I would survive. A 10 out of 10 that I would survive, no chance that I'm surviving. And then so on and so forth for the remaining 2 categories. The first series that I would not want to live in would be The Poppy Wars by R.F. Kuang. For the first category, I'm going to give myself a 5 out of 10. So not very good odds that I survive. This world is basically war ravaged and just kind of hostile all around, and if you're not part of the group that is kind of godlike and has to take drugs to like cause mass destruction, then you're part of the group that's facing the mass destruction. So definitely not good odds, and on top of it the entire world is just plagued by war and famine and just overall really harsh conditions, and so you are just probably not likely to survive here. The second category being fear factor, I'm going to give this actually a pretty low score for this. I don't think that it has a very high fear factor. I think this is sitting at like a 2 out of 10. There's really not much besides the everyday fear of just war and destruction. And category 3 would be hostility scale, and again this is kind of one of those ones where the hostility scale kind of includes a couple different things. General like overall destruction of the world, just danger, environmental factors of war, famine, that sort of thing. And so I think this actually ranks decently high, but I think it's probably more like a 4 or a 5 out of 10, so not the worst book. For the Poppy Wars, the final total for the ranking system is 11.5 out of 30, which makes it the 5th spot on our list. The 4th place is going to be The Witcher by Andrzej Sapkowski. And the first category would be would I survive? I'm gonna say probably a 7 out of 10 that I am not surviving. If you're not killed by the war and the general destruction of the world, you're eaten or killed by a monster. So you got one or the other coming for you. 2 would be fear factor, and I actually think I'm going to score this a little bit lower just because it's not a huge fear factor. There's not anything that's, you know, makes my skin crawl, gives me goosebumps, that sort of thing. The monster is kind of the monster of the week, and generally the theme behind the stories in The Witcher are that men and people and humanity are the real monsters, and so the fear factor generally comes from the fact that people are evil. I'm well aware that people are evil, and so the fear factor is pretty low on this. I'm going to give this probably about a 3 out of 10 for fear factor. Our final category being the hostility scale. This actually ranks pretty high because it's a lot like the Poppy Wars in that there's just general war and destruction and famine. It's just a very grim, horrible world to live in, and so overall, like, not a lot of environmental factors, like the elements aren't really necessarily out to get you, but if war doesn't get you, again, a monster will. So on the hostility scale, I'm probably going to rate it about a 5 out of 30. The Witcher ends with a total score of 15 out of 30, and this takes our number 4 spot of worst worlds to live in. The number 3 spot of places that I would not want to live is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, and although this is a very beloved series of mine, it is not somewhere that I would want to live. No chance, no way, and in category 1, would I survive? The likelihood is probably really low. The environment of this place is spewing ash, there's no sunshine, And if you're a nobility, you're kind of hunted down and kind of killed by the people that are Mistborns. And if you're part of the regular population, you're basically a slave. And so there's really no good choice here. So I would say that very unlikely that I'm going to survive. Probably an 8 or 9 out of 10 that I wouldn't survive in this world. Category 2 is Fear Factor. I actually think that this scores higher than I think people would think. And I'm kind of ranking these as series as a whole, not just individual books. And as a series, Mistborn is quite terrifying. There are people that have like spikes driven through their eyes and they see through these spikes and they stick out the back of their head like, ugh. Like, terrifying. It's just disgusting. You have these giant like troll-like creatures that just like, they'll eat anything. They'll eat people. They're just really nasty. They have like a killing frenzy, just murderous rage. Fear factor wise, I am actually going to give this a 7 out of 10. And for our hostility scale, all of those kind of environmental factors, the spewing of the ash, the slave population, I am going to give this probably a 7 out of 10 as Mistborn ends with a total of 19 out of 30 for our total in our ranking system. And that is actually a bit higher than I expected. And the next world that I would not want to live in would be the 5th season or the Broken Earth Trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. This was actually lower on my list, but once I started to rank the books, I started to realize that there was no chance that this wasn't going to be extremely high on the list. Starting with category 1, would I survive? No. 10 out of 10 would not survive. This series and this world is plagued by earth-shattering, like world-ending natural disasters. So if you're a normal human being, you have to kind of experience and just go through these natural world-ending seasons, and that would suck. Like, most of humanity is dead. Then on the other hand, if you are what are called orogenes, which are basically earthbenders, then you are hunted down and killed and or taken to a school to try and hone your skills, but this school is not a good school. So there's so many factors here that like 10 out of 10, there's just no chance that I'm surviving in this world regardless of anything. Fear factor for category number 2. This has a really high fear factor for me. I just think that the general population being like, I don't know, just like world-ending events to me are just terrifying, like the apocalypse basically. Then on top of that, the fear factor of like these people that hunt down the orogenes in this series are very scary. They're like albino, they have like white translucent skin, and they are just like superhuman, like vampire-esque people, and they're just terrifying. Like, they're just really kind of scary. And then, spoiler, I will disclaim that if you have not read this series, please do not just skip a little bit. At the end of this series, if you use a certain amount of your ability, you are slowly turned to stone. And then these like terrifying creatures come and eat the stone from you. You're like being eaten, but it's stone, but it's you. Terrifying. Just generally terrifying. So this actually ranks pretty high for me in the fear factor. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10 in the fear factor. And then the third category being the hostility scale. I'm just gonna have to give this a 9 out of 10 on the hostility scale. If the world doesn't kill you, then the raiders and the people will, and if you're an orogene, then you're hunted down even when there's not a world-ending, catastrophe going on. So again, a 9 out of 10 for this book. The 5th season ends with only missing 3 points, so it is a 27 out of 30 according to our ranking system. And what you have all been waiting for is my top world that I would not want to live in, and that is Hyperion by Dan Simmons. This is a sci-fi work and series. I have actually only read the first book, and it still is my top place that I would not want to live. I very, very much so want to continue on with the series, but I desperately needed a break from this because I was terrified. So the first category being would I survive? 10 out of 10 would not survive. And it is mainly because there's an alien species invading the planet of Hyperion. And there's also what are called the Shrike that live on Hyperion, and they are native species, and nobody really knows anything about the Shrike, except that they are basically now murdering the population that lives on Hyperion. And so if you're not killed by the current invading alien species, then you are probably murdered by the Shrike. And so 10 out of 10, like, no chance. You're not getting off the planet of Hyperion, and you're not getting off the planet of Hyperion because of these guys. So there's just this general kind of consensus that everyone on Hyperion is just totally effed. And yeah, so that's like 10 out of 10. Definitely not surviving. And for the second category, fear factor, it is also a 10 out of 10 for me. I did not think that I was like a weenie. I didn't think that I was like weak. But there was a particular story in this, and if you've read Hyperion, you know exactly which story it is, that is absolutely just very terrifying, and I happened to read it at nighttime in bed, and I couldn't go to bed after I read that particular story. So it just really freaked me out. I ended up recapping the entire story for my boyfriend, and even he was like, that is literally like a horror movie story. And I was like, yeah, I didn't think that I was a weenie, but I am. And this is showing me that I should never read horror because I don't think I could deal with it. But it's just, it really gets under your skin and just truly, it creeps you out. And the Shrike on top of it are absolutely terrifying creatures that just have like these glowing red eyes and like spikes all over their body, and like they move without any sound or noise, and they just like, they talk to you in your brain, they make you do weird things. Like they're just these crazy, very strange, nobody knows anything about them creatures. And so just 10 out of 10, this whole planet Hyperion, I would never ever 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 want to step foot on Hyperion. And then the third category being the hostility scale, 10 out of 10. Again, if you don't have the alien species kind of coming for your neck, then you have the Shrike coming for you. The planet itself is pretty hostile, and there's lots of empty space because nobody knows where the Shrike are and nobody knows how to kind of avoid them. And so people live in these like very concentrated areas on the planet because Hyperion itself will try to kill you as well. Like plants and animals and just like the general environment is very hostile. And of course Hyperion ends with a total score of 30 out of 30, being absolutely terrifying, will not survive, planet's hostile and out to get you. So this is the ultimate place that you would not want to live in. Thank you so much for watching. I had so much fun filming this. Like, I have not stopped smiling for the last like 30 minutes that I've been filming. I have had this idea for a really long time. I hope that it translated well over camera and that it made sense. Please let me know in the comments below what your worst world that you would not want to live in is. Thank you so much for watching. Again, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join my Discord if you want to talk about books, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!